your host Sana, and this is where we explore the soul of transformation, mindfulness, one real conversation at a time. Now, today in this episode, we are diving into a belief that quietly limits so many of us. The idea that after a certain age, you are stuck, that change is just for the young only, that reinvention is somehow off limits. I'm becoming old. There's nothing to change. I'm just set in my way I am. Uh, so, listeners, when just think about this. What if this isn't true at all? What if your best self is still unfolding, not in spite of your age, but because of it? Now, today's guest knows that journey intimately. Once immersed in the rugged, high stakes world of oilfield construction, he is now redefining purpose and possibility after retirement. From building high performing teams to exploring consciousness, psychedelic healing, and ancient teachings, his path is proof that it's never too late to change your view and your life. So, if you have ever wondered, is this all there is? Or you have thought, I should have figured it out by now. It's too late. This conversation is for you. So, with that, listeners, let's welcome my guest, Layton Fulton. So, Layton, welcome to the show, and I'm really, really honored to have you here with us.
Thanks, Sona. Yeah, this is great. I enjoy the podcast and I like all the real conversations and I really enjoy this format. So I'm looking forward to talking to you.
Thank you so much for the kind words, Layton. And okay, let's and when I was reading your intro, it is like you had it all figured out in your corporate world. Many would call, I would call it as a successful career, a solid career, raising children, doing all the right things. But then you still found yourself asking, what now? So, can you walk us through that moment of realization or that epiphany?
Yeah, for sure. It was something, that I didn't really have, that epiphany, you're talking about that aha moment. It
Mhm.
It was a long time coming. It was a nudge that I could feel for a long time, but was ignoring, not out of ignorance, but more so out of the lack of knowing what it was, what that uncomfortability was. And you're very correct. I 100% thought I did have it all figured out. I'm not going to say I had a perfect life, but I had the perfect life for me. I'll preface this by saying that we work with clients and I work with people and you hear so often people say, "Oh, I wish I hadn't done this. Oh, I wish I'd have known this 20 years ago. Oh, I wish I hadn't done that." And I don't believe in that. At the time we have our strife and our struggles, but I'm a firm believer that everything we go through up until the point where we realize we might want to make a change or we get interested or curious about something else, I think all of that was necessary 100% to make you the person that you are today. If you had not made those, call them mistakes, or I like to refer to them as rich learnings, you go through those and they make you the person that you are today. So without all that, you wouldn't be this individual that has all this insight or an individual that has all this experience that you can perhaps mentor or pass on to others, or maybe even just look back at and smile and shake your head and be like, whew, I'm glad I made it through all that. I'm glad I'm not living that life anymore, but here I am.
Uh-huh.
And that's what makes me who I am today. So I did. I was, sitting in corporate America, for lack of a better term, and thinking, "Okay, this is the pinnacle. This is what I did my time. I worked in the field. I did my schooling. I listened. I got some bumps on the head. I got, brought in and said, you're doing okay. We like to invest time with you, And there's all these great companies that I work for and amazing mentors that helped me get to this point. And I'm like, okay, here I am. We got a company truck. We got a company phone. We got a fuel card. Life is good. I've got safety, I've got familiarity, I've got my, 5-day a week, and, that's where you're supposed to put your feet up on the desk and, I didn't really have that type of job, but you know what I'm saying? You put your feet up on and you coast. This is what I'm gonna do now. I've learned things, now I pass that information on, and I do this, and as when I once I realized that, I felt this, I don't know what it was, this itch, this nudge, this something that there's gotta be more than this. Like, I've got it made and it's safe, Mm. but I wasn't, I was having a hard time getting out the door in the morning. I was wondering where I fit in, or I was wondering, am I doing this right? Am I not doing this right? And there is no right, there is no wrong. It's like you have to take an inventory in the morning when you're sitting on the edge of the bed, putting your socks on, and say, do I want to do this? And I need to be honest with myself. And if you say, no, I don't really want to. Well, then what is it? What is it that itch, that nudge that is at you? What is it? And it takes a lot of honest, hard conversations to, what do I like? What don't I like? Is it about just doing things that you like forever? Or what is it, this thing that I'm looking for? And that takes a lot of time and self-realization, or a lot of books, a lot of time alone, and a lot of thought to kind of figure that out.
Mhm. It's just like in marketing we talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that the basic physiological, the safety needs, family and friends, social connections, they have been met. But when you go to the upper levels of understanding yourself, or kind of, that desire to understand or realize one's true potential, I believe you are now in that particular phase of your life, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, once, my kids are in their 20s now, they've been productive members of society for years, and they pay their own bills, and they do their own things, and I've got this amazing, it's a very different relationship when you're there, they're under your roof and under your umbrella, and I mean, I still am always here for them, but I have an amazing relationship. They're doing well. I'm so proud of them, and then, I got sitting with myself and I'm like, I wonder what my hobbies are now that you're not helping kids get to work and helping them get to school and helping them with projects and things. It's just, do I still like my hobbies? What kind of books do I like to read? I hadn't, sat down and read a book for a while, nothing to do with them, but my priorities were elsewhere. And and so then you get exploring that and you're like, maybe I don't like doing this anymore. Am I doing it out of habit? Because this has been my hobby since, I was 23, but now it doesn't suit me? Is it seeming like a chore rather than, something that's keeping me mindful? I
Mm.
got back into the fitness that I always enjoyed because here I was sitting at a desk and I'm like, oh, well, part of this is I'm not working with my hands anymore. I'm not walking a bunch of miles and doing things physically. I've got to get that part of my life back because that was always very important to me. And one part you really realize is that when you sit and you think about change, or you think about, is this who I am? Is this what I do? How come I was happy, all of these promotions and all this work that I put in, and all of these deadlines that I met and all of this work towards getting to here,
Mm.
those were all very rewarding, but was I just taking those steps because I thought that's what you're supposed to do? Because that's what everybody else does. You work harder for the next step. Is this how I was gauging my success? And in doing that, that becomes your identity. And you get a bit of an ego about that. That is, not a negative part of ego I'm speaking, but your identity is, you're the person that works hard. You're the hardest working person on the crew. You're the person that's striving for that next cog. You want to move up, and then you start gauging your success based on where your hierarchy is, and not in an egotistical version, but why wouldn't you work to be the next leader? Why wouldn't you be working hard to move in that forward direction? Everybody thinks of it as a forward direction. And then, you get there and you think like, do I continue moving? But I'm not going to be happy sitting here. I've acknowledged that now. So what's my next step? Is it lateral? Is it a leap to something unknown, as a
Mhm.
challenge? And then that was available to me now that, just like you had spoken about, when your kids are under your roof and you want to, you're the caregiver, you're the person that's making sure the bills are paid, and I mean, I still have to pay my bills, but I have some freedom now that, if I'm not gonna be done my tasks by supper time because I have this drive to do something bigger or this drive to try something, that's fine, I can do that now. So I started, you know, exploring those types of things, and it kinda took me to this is interesting, I'm very interested in being a perpetual student of life, I guess.
That's a good one, Leighton. Good one. Student of life. Wonderful. And in your let's I'll just call it a second innings of your life. Um, did you find something that you discovered or realized surprising and in a way extremely challenging the beliefs or the belief system that you had or you have had in the earlier phase of your life, when you were into your corporate
Yeah.
job.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I, it was challenging. I was very fortunate growing up that I had, I'll speak about mentors a lot. I really did. I had my
Mhm.
grandfather, my parents. I worked for farmers in the area. I worked for businessmen in the area. I was a tradesman. So, as a tradesman, as an apprentice, you work with someone who is a designated mentor to you as an apprentice. This is the person that will be teaching you. And I had that in business. I had that on the farm. I had that in my life. I had all these amazing mentors. So, you know, pardon me. And they encourage you. A good mentor encourages you to, anybody can get up in the morning on time and come and do stuff. So what is your flavor to this? What do you bring to the table? What is your gift, your special, that you can bring to it? And so I always had that in the back of my mind, but it always would be in reference to work, to my hands-on, to what I was doing. And I found that the further I became successful or moved forward in my career, the less I brought that forward in my personal life. Because I was veering off and my career was becoming my identity.
Mhm.
Which when I was younger, and I mean, I traveled. I had a job that allowed me to travel all over the country and meet thousands of people of all walks of life, and it was
Mm.
amazing. But then again, speaking about taking that next, it wasn't sustainable. So I was taking those next natural progressions to, to get an office job, to get home, to be at home and to raise a family and to be present for my relationships and my family and for myself, not just be chasing the next project, but be home. And once when I was home, I found a comfortable place, and then I had those times to sit in there and, some of the decisions that you wanna make to chase something or to explore something that's out of your comfortability might not be something that all of the people you've been hanging out with for decades or your friends or your support group are interested in. So,
Mm.
you have to be comfortable with being with yourself and saying, "I am going to explore this on my own," and I have a great support group of friends that are like, "Hey, you do you, man. We're still gonna be your friends regardless of what you're doing outside of our time together." But it was hard in that I like the curiosity. I really found that I do love learning. I
Mhm.
had to find my style of learning. I'm not good with sitting down and just reading books and copy and writing. So I found, I have good audio comprehension. I love it that we have audiobooks now. The internet is a great place to find information, but you have to clearly filter out, and not just go down your echo chambers and find the things that are easy to learn. So, that was uncomfortable at my age. I'm not that old, I'm not speaking like I'm totally out of the whack, but
So,
I never learned to type in high school. That's not the kind of high school that I'd went to. I wasn't really very savvy and technology on computers. So I'm like, if I want to expand myself and take these courses and do these things, there's some very basic tasks that I have to put my ego in my pocket and bumble around and ask people for help and take these other courses to learn very basic things, so you have to be willing to again put your ego to the side and be like, I don't know what I'm doing here, but I am so called to learn something that I need to do these things, and it was interesting, but then you learn things and you wanna talk to somebody about it. You wanna throw ideas around, and I would come back to the people again, that have been close to me for decades, and even my family, and it's just, who do you talk to about it? They're not enveloped in this learning of whether it be spirituality or whether it be learning how to navigate your way through, being a better person, whether it's coaching yourself or, I was reading books that were kind of out there for my,
Mhm.
quantum physics and quantum science. And I was kind of having to not find new friends, but find like-minded individuals to discuss it with. And that's great.
Mm.
But you do end up putting a bit of your life, behind you.
True, true. And in this whole, one thing I truly understood that you went through that process of unlearning to learn, because you are absolutely right. You have to keep your ego in your pocket to learn something which you may not find it very easy, which may not be going along with the belief system that you have. But uh, and this is something that is so much connected with the idea of mindfulness. I just have had so many conversations around mindfulness, not just from the perspective or context of meditation or breath work or retreats, but it's about the way of living, about the thought process, the way of thinking that you have. So in a way, it kind of defines the essence of mindfulness, the transformation you have had.
Yeah, very much so. That was pardon me, that's exactly where it started. I had
Mhm.
gone to I had gone to a counselor, once I had when I was sitting in my office and I'm like, "I'm not really good at this typing, I'm not very good at sitting down." That was never my if you talk to any of my teachers when I went to, school from kindergarten to grade 12, that's not one of my strong points, the sitting down and the doing things, but, that has been my life, but when I'm interested in something, you can pour your focus into it, so I went to a counselor and said, "I need some tools." I had been just kind of had a chaotic energy and I just said, I'm not very interested in this, but I want to be better at it. And that was with the corporate job that I'd had at the time. So I had gone on ADHD meds. It was Concerta, which is, an amphetamine that was great for sitting and doing a job, but it
Hmm.
was I didn't care for it. At the end of the day, doing everything felt very mechanical. I felt like I'd lost my spark. And I'm like, well, this is a great tool for doing these things that you're not interested in, but I don't want to do things that I'm not interested in forever. So I started really exploring mindfulness. That was the first thing that this counselor had said. Well, mindfulness is being present, and you get into the Eckhart Tolle, you get into the Alan Wattses of the world and Thomas
Mhm.
Campbell and individuals that, there is no past, there is no future, there is only the now. There is, just be present and worry about what's in front of you, and
Mm.
that can, very much quiet your mind, and that was something that I'd learned that, mindfulness, just like you spoke of, can be reading a book, it can be going for a walk without headphones on, it can be, making a playlist for your yoga class that's
Yeah.
coming up later. It can be anything that is, just being present, and when I learned that, I realized that, there's not a you don't need a 1, 2, 3, 4 procedural book to becoming enlightened or becoming you being your best person. You just need effort and you need intention that I want to do this. And if you tell yourself you want to do it, your nervous system will feel when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing or doing what you want to be doing.
Mm. That's right. I couldn't agree more with that. It's a feeling, and um it's kind of a choice, and there cannot be a one size fits all approach for everyone. And Leighton, you of course cover on that you did dive into meditation consciousness, and in fact you also dived into psychedelic therapy, and it opened new doors for you. So what surprised you most about those explorations, especially psychedelic therapy? Because there are so misconceptions hovering around this particular approach here. I mean, how did this shift your perspective on aging and identity? A lot of many questions, but yeah.
That is an awesome question. Uh, one thing that I will definitely, yeah, the psychedelic therapy. I entered into it as a student, and had a psychedelic journey with some experienced individuals, and they expressed the importance that psychedelics are not, or we were not using them for escapism. I had one experience and that was, that showed me what was available to me. It showed me a different way of thinking. It gives you the opportunity to spend some time with yourself. And when you're doing that with again, comes back to an intention, going in very grounded, going in with an intention to, rather than just have an experience, go in and say, hey, I want to discuss this with myself, or I want to experience my mind thinking outside the box. I want to see what else is available to me. I put myself with all these rules, all these regulations that this is how you think and this is what you do. I would like to experience my childlike mind again, where
Yeah.
you just think and experience and look around and say, isn't that interesting? And get
Mm.
curious. When you get curious, you engage your mind with such an amazing way to think outside of the procedural. Oh, I thought this, now I do this. We do this, then we do that. And you just put myself in that space and say, how am I going to react to that? Am I going to be uncomfortable? Am I going to be enthralled, or am I going to put that to some use and integrate that into my life and say, you know what? Your experience, your perception is your reality. So, am I just perceiving that, have I put myself in this box with borders and with walls and with my blinders on? Have I done that to myself? You can't blame anybody else. Nobody can do anything to you. That's you, your perception of I'm doing this, I'm perceiving it this way. So it did that, and it did. It was uncomfortable, because I had given myself these rule sets that this is who you are and this is your ego, and you have to confine within that. And it opened up my thinking, just that, again, perception being your reality. So being able to feel connected, being able to feel an openness to just think whatever you want to think. It really did feel like I was experiencing that childlike mind of mine again, with curiosity and just a smile on my face all the time. So I came out of that journey just with the knowing that, you know, this isn't escapism if you do it properly. If you do it with someone that can keep you grounded and give you that intention. And when you integrate it into your life, you don't need to revisit it. It's an invitation of, this is available. You can simply be mindful, put yourself back into that mindset, and be right back there without the medicine. And that has greatly, you know, it's changed my life, and it's changed how I experience life. And it's not about chasing positivity and happiness all the time. You, like I'd spoke a while ago, when you do have these uncomfortable moments, it's not about fleeting from them. It's about being mindful and sitting in them and saying, "Why does that upset me? Why did that interaction make me angry? What was it about that that's causing me to feel this way?" And it really slowed me down and gave me the ability to sit in that and be honest with myself and then release things. So, humans are the only mammal on earth that, for some reason, we like to bottle things up. If you watch a rabbit or a bird, or, I mean, I use these examples because I have a lot of wildlife where I live. If you
Oh, yeah.
watch a small animal escape a predator, it gets into the briar patch, or it gets back in its home, or it gets into the tree, and it shakes it off. And then it carries on because that's what you have to do. Humans like to, put that in a jar and stuff it deep down and hold that in. And eventually it's going to rear its ugly head again. And if you haven't given yourself some tools to be able to sit in it and acknowledge why you shoved that away, or why you didn't deal with it, or who the person you are today thinks of that now, your nervous system is going to be dysregulated. And I just don't think that you can enjoy the point of being fully human and being here and now if you don't grab some of those tools.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's kind of not sure, but what I understand is that's as you mentioned about the examples of humans and wildlife. That's kind of the um, learning I can take from evolution or adaptation. That instead of just escaping or trying to uh, avoid or moving away from the problems, um, let's try to embrace them and try to understand, be not reactive but more of a proactive. And of course, right now, if we talk about today's context, Leighton, that there's so much happening around us. It's really, really, it's kind of impossible to, uh, to a huge extent that we can cut away ourselves. But how do we bring that filter within us, that this is something good for me, this is something bad for me? Because, sometimes when we try to intentionally cut ourselves away from everything, there's a fear arising. This is coming personally from my experience, Leighton, that I'll be feeling like I'm living in a cage, or I'm living in completely unaware of what is happening. So I'm going to be completely outdated. So that's going to be harmful. So let me just be exposed to everything what is happening. So it becomes kind of a vicious circle. So what's your opinion on this?
Yeah, yeah, and the point is, again, you said it greatly. When you start doing that, you can alienate yourself, and you can, if I'm just going to be all about me, then you do become this individual that's not connected. And you know, uh, when you get that uncomfortability, or when people get, your nervous system, and you're like, oh, I use the example of meditation and yoga, and everything is amazing. I do both. I love my yoga practice, but whether it's fitness, or it's exercise, or healthy eating, or anything, so many people are very quick to, when they become uncomfortable, they're like, okay, I'm in this funk. I got to get myself out of it. I'm going to go do some yoga. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to do this. Those are no different than if you're self-medicating, by having a glass of wine, or indulging in something else. It's that it becomes escapism, and not dealing with what the uncomfortability is. And I can't remember the name of the fellow that had mentioned it, but we here are all and back to the psychedelics. They made me really realize that you can be disconnected from the world, and yet still be part of the whole. So, if that makes any sense, we're like, I think it's Alan Watts that speaks of, we are but a droplet of water in the ocean of consciousness. So, your life arc is, if there's a splash, you, as this droplet, leave the hole, and do your arc, and experience all this stuff, and then return to the hole. So we never really leave. We're always connected to everyone. And I do have to say, when I had the big realization that I can do my own thing, but I'm still part of a support system. I'm still part of the whole, and part of everything. When that gives you that safety to be able to acknowledge that you aren't really leaving, you're just being a distinct individual, or that you're being a distinct part of that whole process. You're not separating yourself from anybody, and I do have to remember that, or you can cause yourself to feel alienated, and it's like, "Am I doing this on my own?" But, you never really are, if you can put yourself back into that state of connectedness, that mindfulness.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Beautifully explained, Leighton. Of course, keeping in interest of the time before we wrap up, Leighton, if our listeners they would like to connect with you and get a hold of the wonderful resources that you are sharing with everyone, what will be the best way?
I work for a clinic called Lifecraft, and it is available online anywhere at lifecraft.me, and that will take you to the website. And there's a link tree there, that we have nutritional healing with, we have, ancient foods, with pemmican, nutritional, non-vaccinated, free-range food. We have, therapy, we have hypnotherapy. I'm a certified hypnotherapist myself. We utilize engineered sound for sound therapy, and all sorts of stuff that just, really helps you. There's so many different ways to help a person get connected, to yourself. And if you don't know where to start, just try something, and be honest with yourself about how something makes you feel, and those are all available at Lightcraft, at that lifecraft.me website.
Wonderful. I'll make sure to have all the links and details in the show notes. And Layden, this was such a frank, honest conversation. For me, it didn't feel like a podcast, but just a regular, coffee conversation. So
That's
thank
awesome, me too. Yeah, I love the format, and I thank you for talking to me today. It was great. You asked great questions, and it's engaging. It's nice to hear some feedback from, just again, just having a conversation with a like-minded individual. So this is great. Thank you for your time.
thank you so much, Layton, for your kind words. And to all the listeners, it's a rhetoric, but what if the life you want isn't behind you, but waiting quietly within you? Well, today's conversation reminds us that the path to change isn't a dramatic leap, it is a gentle unfolding, like the peeling away of an onion. A willingness to question, to listen to the quiet nudges, to release the old scripts that no longer fit. Whether you are 45 or 75, or in fact 95, you're not too late. You're right on time. And thank you to everyone for being a part of this podcast, The Mindful Living. If you like this conversation, then please subscribe, share this episode with someone that they need. And also, until next time, this is your host, Sana, signing off. Thank you.